Kijuju, a region in Africa that bore witness to a biohazard outbreak of the parasitic organisms known as Las Plagas, along with a brand new bioweapon known as Uroboros in 2009 during the events of Resident Evil 5. B.S.A.A. agents Chris Redfield and Sheva Alomar were dispatched to the location to put an end to the outbreak and prevent a rumoured doomsday project constructed by none other than the series' coolest antagonist, Albert Wesker. Kijuju was quite the scenic departure from the locations of previous games. No creepy mansions full of booby traps, no American cities filled with the dead, nor was it a rural Spanish town with a castle. This time it was somewhere in mainland Africa with sprawling savannas, beautiful marshlands, and massive canyons. Years ago, I had a debate with a friend about Kijuju and the various Majini designs, which made me beg the question, where exactly is Kijuju? Well, today I have decided to do my best to narrow it down to a real-world location. So sit back, relax, and enjoy what turned into an unexpectedly long and winding rabbit hole. To try to keep this video as short as possible, I'll break down the evidence I found in-game to identify the country or region the game is most likely located in, and then I'll relate it to the real world. Unsurprisingly, not all of it matches up perfectly, but the biggest discrepancy is something I think I can explain within the game's own lore. First thing we need to keep in mind is that the Resident Evil series is based in a world very similar to our own, as real-life locations and politics are mentioned. Damnation, Umbrella Chronicles, and Resident Evil 6 all make reference to the Soviet Union. Resident Evil 4 is clearly set in rural Spain, and also references Washington DC. In Vendetta, New York City, Chicago, and Colorado all appear, so I feel comfortable enough to relay in-game evidence to the real world. Let's begin. What do we know about Kijuju from the game and its related content? While playing the game, we learn the following details about the region. The people speak Swahili, as this is the language the Majini used during the course of the game and is especially noticeable with the agitator during the execution sequence. Signs on buildings throughout Kijuju are written in English, which means English is also the main language of the region. This is quite common in African countries as many have more than one national language. Later in the game, we have the appearance of Nile crocodiles in the marshlands, which, as a side fact, aren't infected with anything at all. Those are life-sized male Nile crocodiles. Soon after, we meet the tribal Majini, showing that this is a region where traditional tribes haven't been rendered extinct by the modern world. Africa is famed for its mineral mines, and Kijuju is no exception to this. Though one thing that does stand out is the oil fields, as those aren't as common on the African continent. And last, but not least, the game does appear to narrow down the location by stating that Josh, Dechant, and Sheva are all agents of the B.S.A.A. West Africa branch.
Captain Josh Stone, B.S.A.A. West Africa branch.
So that's where I began my investigation. Unfortunately, the involvement of the West Africa branch being evidence that the game takes place in West Africa is misleading at best. If Kijuju was in West Africa, it would have to be in one of the West African countries on the map here. However, none of these highlighted countries speak Swahili, nor do they have crocodiles. So whatever Kijuju is, it's not West Africa. How do I explain this contradiction? Well, my theory is that the West Africa branch of the B.S.A.A. is the biggest and most competent in the region, so anything that happens on the African continent comes under their jurisdiction. So if we can accept this explanation, then we can definitively state that whatever Kijuju is, it's not West Africa. Time to get back to the remaining evidence. Let's start on the most common piece of evidence, the Swahili language. The only countries that have Swahili as a natural language are Burundi, the Comoro Islands, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Malawi, Mozambique, Rwanda, Somalia, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zanzibar. This is our starting list. Now, We can narrow this list down using the range of Nile crocodiles on the African continent. So, by removing any countries on this list that don't have Nile crocodiles native to the region, we end up with this slightly shorter list. Burundi, Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Malawi, Mozambique, Rwanda, Somalia, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia. Unfortunately, that's still 10 possible countries. So we need to narrow this down even further using the other pieces of evidence readily available in the game. The English language. If we filter down the countries for Swahili, crocodiles, and English, then we end up with Kenya, Uganda, and Zambia. This is where it starts to get much trickier to narrow down a possible location. But the game and its related files and lore have enough information to help us narrow this down even further. In the game's complementary files, we learn that one of the core components of the Kijuju economy was the export of coffee beans from the ports, which we can see in the game. This information doesn't narrow this list down any further though, as all 3 of these countries export coffee. However, in another complementary file we learn that Kijuju is dealing with the aftermath of a civil war, which is why Tricell were able to take advantage to test Las Plagas and Uroboros as the country was already a mess. So, do any of these 3 countries have a history of conflict shortly before 2009? Yes, one of them. Kenya. Though it wasn't as disruptive as Kijuju's history, the 2007 to 2008 Kenyan crisis did end with 1,500 people killed and up to 600,000 displaced. Though, if the tragedy of Kenya's politics is not enough to convince you, then one last piece of in-game evidence should do the trick. Wesker uses the Tricell tanker to sail out to sea before launching his stealth bomber to spread Uroboros across the globe. This confirms Kijuju must be in a region similar to Kenya, as Uganda and Zambia are landlocked, while Kenya is not. Before I add a few more bits of evidence, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole in trying to work out if the volcano at the end of the game is located in the Comoros Islands, which are volcanic. Upon realising that they board the tanker at sunset, and that the stealth bomber, which seems to be a B-2 Spirit, was only in the air for around 3 to 5 minutes, with Wesker dying just before sunrise, I came to the ridiculous realisation that Chris and Sheva were on the tanker for 10 hours. That just doesn't seem right to me, so I gave up trying to work out their travel time and distance covered at that point. So, is there any other evidence to support Kijuju being in Kenya? Kenya does have mines for titanium, lead, aluminium, bauxite, alumina, and gold. So the mines in the game check out, as we don't know what substance they were actually mining for. The oil fields don't quite match up, as the oil in Kenya was discovered in 2012 and RE5 takes place in 2009. But in a world with companies like Tricell and Umbrella, I think we can just assume it was discovered sooner than in real life. The tribal Majini have a relationship with the crocodiles as seen in their execution grounds, so they could be vaguely based on the El Molo tribe, which were known for killing crocodiles and hippos. Also, the soldier at the start of the game, along with many of the base Majini, share a passing resemblance to the Kenyan military, specifically with the Red Beret. And finally, the topic of the debate that prompted this video in the first place. Should there be such a variety of Majini in the game, or should they mostly be black African? Well, Kenyan Arabs tend to be found on the coast, and we've established that that's where Kijuju is located. Asians can be found in business sectors, and there are plenty of white Europeans as a consequence of British colonialism. Even though Kijuju is entirely fictional, as are most places with biohazard outbreaks in the Resident Evil universe, I think it's fairly certain to conclude that if Kijuju was real, it would be found in Kenya. But what do you all think? Do you agree with my evidence and conclusions, or do you think somewhere else would be more accurate? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. as it really helps the channel and lets me know what videos to focus on.